Yes. Yes.
Okay. So first I want to say thank you to everybody who has gotten on. My name is Tracy White. I am Executive Director of God Nation. And tonight we have decided to start doing a show called The Vax Files. And yes, it is a spinoff of, well, not a spinoff, but a playoff of the X Files. Dear brother Charles came up with that. And so I want to introduce y'all to Charles. He is my brother twice over. He is my brother in Christ, and he is my brother in law because he's married to my sister. So, yeah, he's my brother twice over. You're going to be hearing from Charles Williams tonight. He is a nutritionist, a nutritional counselor. Okay. And he's going to be giving us some foundation on the vaccine. And I want to tell y'all this, there is history to the vaccine. There's the way all this kind of stuff came to being. And so some of this stuff is going to be cerebral. And I'm just asking you to uncap your minds and put your thinking caps on and get ready for some lessons in history from the vaccine, because we're going to do a few segments. That way, Charles will be able to get all this information out. So we're going to be going over vaccine history, which is basically the laws and how it came to be. And he's also going to be going over vaccine hierarchy, which is the governing bodies that implement these laws and the way it all comes down. And that's very important for us to know. And then he's also going to be going over the health aspect, how to build your immune system up to the vaccine, all that stuff that's coming out and the viruses and whatnot. And so there are going to be a few segments. He's not going to try to cram everything into one segment because we don't want you guys getting, mentally overloaded. But so tonight he's gonna be starting with the history and how it came into be, and whatever else God puts on his heart to say in this segment. And then, guys, we're gonna go into a Q&A. We'll be unmuted. We'll go into a Q&A where you guys can ask questions. So while he's presenting, if you have any questions, if this fosters any questions while he's presenting, write it down. Make some type of notation in your phone or on a pad or something. That way you don't lose your question, because the questions are extremely important, because when people ask questions, it puts a demand on the actual source of knowledge, the revelation that God has given him to be able to disseminate this information. So questions are going to be extremely important. It's going to create the atmosphere for God to give us strategy, because this is not just for information. This is not for knowledge alone. This is so we could come together and God could give us strategy, intel on how to combat the things that they are doing. Okay. And so, with no further ado, my brother, Charles Williams.
Hallelujah. Glory to God. Praise the Lord. I do appreciate all of you for showing up. And I do take this very serious, because if you're a believer like me, you're a child of God. And even if you don't believe the same way that I do believe that you were made by a higher power. And the way in which you're supposed to be treated is to the highest extent and highest degree. So I did take my time and, put in hours of research, sacrifice sleep, time with my family to be able to bring you this information. I'm not going to sit up here and call myself an expert, but I am very devout to the work that I do. I'm a health coach. I'm in school right now to become a naturopathic doctor. I chose the natural route because I did see a lot of discrepancies with the traditional Western form of medicine and that whole hierarchy and system of things here in America. So I chose the naturopathic route. Uh, I'll share a quick story. What got me started on this route for, naturopathic remedies was when I was younger. I ended up in the hospital, and during my stay there, um, I was 15. I was boxing at the time. I was running track in school, young, strong young man. So when I went into the hospital, I was diagnosed with scoliosis, which is not a big deal. But what they told me was I had to have surgery. So after the surgery, I woke up and they told me that I was going to be paralyzed and I wasn't going to be able to walk anymore. And so, I sat there confused, because I walked in fine, but now they were telling me I couldn't walk out. And they wasn't lying, because I didn't have any feeling in my toes. I couldn't feel my hands or anything. And It was a very emotional time there. Uh, Man, it was like my life was taken from me. And so after I got that news, my stepmother at the time, she came in the hospital and she was like, Charlie, I know you don't believe in God, but you need to pray. And, I didn't want to pray because I didn't feel good enough, just stuff that we normally would go through. So I ended up praying and I read a scripture in the book of Psalms. 3 days later, I was able to move my toes, which was to the doctor's amazement, because they told me when I woke up, well, they didn't tell me, I overheard them talking. And the doctor told the nurse, well, he's not going to walk again, but it was a good cut. So, long story short, 180 staples, from the top of my neck all the way down to the base of my spine. 4 days later, I was able to walk out of the hospital. Of course, I got wheelchaired out, but I was able to get up off of the bed and walk. I fell a couple of times. It was IV everywhere, and it was really, really bad. But I ended up leaving the hospital 8 months ahead of schedule. And then, a year later, I was back running track. I was back playing basketball. Everything they said that I couldn't do, I could do. And I'm sitting, but I stand here before you whole in Jesus' name. So I wanted to share that and kind of give a basis as to why, medicine and natural remedies are important, because I was deceived by the man in the white coat. I trusted them, and I know all doctors are not like that. I have doctors who are, dear friends of mine and colleagues, but that particular doctor, he deceived me and made me believe that my life was over when indeed it was just beginning. So that part I do thank them for, opening me up and helping transition into what do you see now. So with that being said, I'm going to share my screen with you all, and we are going to get into this presentation. Okay. Now go back. Yes. Such a work of art. So vaccines, this is the history, the hierarchy, and the health. Okay. Now, so first thing we're going to cover is history. Now, as a prelude, if you will, I know some of us, we've heard of the World Economic Forum, and a lot of people know a gentleman by the name of Bill Gates. And I'm not going to talk in extent of him, but he's heavily involved with, for him to come from computers and electronics into the world of medicines and vaccines and what the government would classify as countermeasures. He's taken a global position in manufacturing vaccines. And, Bill Gates predominantly acquires his wealth from patents. And so a lot of what we're seeing rolling out now, starting from 2019 in October, he has his hands in a lot of different things. And some of those things we're going to cover, not in depth tonight, but we will in the course of time. So there was an event, it was called Event 201. And that's something that I would definitely write down and I would look it up. And the reason why I'm leading with this is because in order for us to understand how they're able to use the law, how they're able to influence legislature, but also create loopholes so they can operate and not be held accountable for what they did, they stage and structure things. And one of the things that, Bill Gates and many others is using is his success and his profits that he made from electronics. So Event 201 occurred between September and October of 2019. And in Event 201, what they did was they acted out what it would seem like in America and in the world over, how a pandemic would affect the nations. And that's every continent, every nation of people on the planet. And so in New York, they got together, the World Health Organization, the NIH, a bunch of different government organizations, scientists, and what they did was they act like there was a pandemic, and so they started to enact laws in that in that play that they were doing. So Event 201 talked about different things that they would do in order to sanitize things, things that they would do in order to restrict travel, things that they would do in order to start locking people down, vaccinations that they would use. And I mean, it was so detailed. I was trying to find a video that they originally did so I could show y'all how detailed it was, from them having data from the CDC from a certain state saying we have seen a spike or an increase in these cases of people getting coronavirus, which they knew about since the mid 2000s, around 2013. They already knew about the coronavirus. So they were talking about, we've seen a spike in cases in America. And based on this data, the government used that to implement laws to lock us down, to restrict travel, to hold people at airports for 15 days at a time. And all of these things were already written in law before 2019. And so what we did was we seen after this play that they did with Event 201, immediately after that, that's when we seen all of these things start to act out. And the reason why I wanted to preface with that and bring up history first and the laws, the legislature, and the loopholes was because I want y'all to understand how important law is and how impactful it is, for one. For two, for those of us who know the Bible, we operate on a law that's different. You know, we are speaking spirits with the gift of intelligent speech, according to Hebraic thought. So why is that important? It's important because we speak and we turn things into law. So what I'm not going to say the enemy, but what's going on is these men are, it's like a blueprint. If you make a blueprint for a building, you follow the blueprint, you eventually turn in everything that's needed, and then you will create a building. So the Event 201 was one of the many blueprints that they utilized in order to create the building. It's a magnificent building. And I don't, you know, I don't want to say that like I'm not aware of what's happened to families and businesses that have been lost due to the coronavirus. But what I am saying is that the way that it was designed, and it was designed, the way it was designed, it was extremely efficient and effective. And so they put a lot of thought into Event 201, and they put a lot of thought into the virus and how it would affect us. And also they made a lot of money off of it. A lot of money was generated from everything that we have had to endure over the last 3 years. So I wanted to enter in with that in mind. You know, there was a plan. They televised the plan, and after them televising the plan, yes, ma'am. Okay. So after they televised the plan, hold on one second. Yeah. Give me one second. There's some people in the waiting room. Okay. I don't see anyone in there. Alrighty. So after they pretty much wrote it all out and they acted it out, what they were doing was putting it out there so that it can come to pass. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the effects of that. And the implementation of it started in the 1970s, but they got all of their information from Hitler's regime in the 1940s, because shortly after I think it's the Lindenberg trials, whenever they had all of the Nazi scientists on trial, what they did was they traded knowledge for immunity. So what Hitler did back in the day was he specialized in the ABCs, and that's atomic, biological, and chemical warfare. He strayed away from atomic warfare because that's what the Jews were doing, and he was like, I don't want to do what they're doing. So he went, you know, what we would call hard in the paint, but he went very, very he got strategic, and he implemented a lot as it pertains to biological and chemical warfare. And so a lot of the different things we have now, one of which is the microwave, is a product of that time. Whenever we receive information from Nazi scientists uh, who affected a lot of the scientific advisory boards, the CDC, some of our scientific practices, and all of those things. And if you think I'm lying, just look up the experiment that they did, the Tuskegee experiment, which was one of many, how they took Americans and gave them a virus and didn't give them treatment for years to see what it would do to their body, syphilis. So that's similar to what was going on in Germany to the Jewish men and women and the other cultures of people who were there as well. So let's get into this. So law, legislature, and loopholes. Okay, so in 1938, this is the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. Now, this was a rendition of a law that was established in 1902. Now, what happened was here they're coining it as a therapeutic disaster. And if you look to the right, of course, we see the lash lure. They're talking about this eyelash dye, or this form of makeup that will be able to beautify women. But afterwards, you can see the before and after pictures. Her eyes were swollen shut. It affected her in a negative way. So there was a lot of things during that time because they didn't have a lot of laws governing food, drugs, and cosmetics. So since they didn't have a lot of laws, people were taking advantage of people. And part of them taking advantage of them was what we see here. So it says a Tennessee drug company marketed a form of new Sofa wonder drug that would appeal to pediatric patients, children. And it talks about what the elixir is. And it says, however, the solvent in its untested product was a highly toxic chemical analog of antifreeze. So they saw fit to give children antifreeze as a form of treatment. And it says 100 people died, many of whom were children. And of course, it's more of an outrage when it happens to a child. That's when it seems like things are getting real and we seem to pay attention whenever it's involving our children or somebody else's child, especially if you have them, you know what I'm talking about. So it says here, the public outcry not only reshaped the drug provisions of the new law to prevent such an event from happening again, it propelled the bill itself through Congress. So Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the FDC Act June 25th of 1938. So that was the first installment of what we will see the government trying to control and make sure that we have food, drugs, and cosmetics that were not detrimental to the people, which is not a bad thing. So it says that this new law brought cosmetics and medical devices under control, and it required that drugs be labeled. That's why we have labeling on drugs now. With adequate directions for safe use. And I'm going to show y'all an example of that later with one of the COVID packages. So these things have to be mixed. They don't come already mixed. The people who administer them have to mix them themselves. And that's why we've been having an issue with some of those vaccines as well. So it says, moreover, it mandated pre-market approval of all new drugs such that a manufacturer would have to prove to the FDA that a drug was safe before it could be sold. So that's why we have the FDA calendar. And in that calendar, it talks about, the process of approval. So there are 4 phases that a drug has to go through in order to be approved by the FDA. And that's the reason why this act was established, but we're talking about loopholes as well. And so we're going to talk about one of those loopholes later. So it says the act also corrected abuses in the food packaging and quality and mandated legally enforceable food standards. So if you want to know a little bit more about that, check out the Food That Built America. It's on the History Channel, and they'll tell you about how a lot of these fast food restaurants, frozen foods, and different things like that, how unsafe they used to be, and why we have so many standards and everything like that governing and surrounded around the food that we consume now. It says tolerances for certain poison substance were addressed. Now, that part right there, this is the reason why we can have toxins that are in medicines, heavy metals that are in vaccines, sulfates and azo dyes and different things like this that are toxic to the body, mercury, but they said that there is a tolerance for that. So what they did was they created an acceptable amount that can go in the body. Like an example of that would be the mercury. If a drop of mercury hit the school ground, the whole school will be evacuated, and they will send in men with hazmat suits. But there's more than a drop of it that goes into vaccinations. So you see the legalities, but they have the loopholes. Very interesting. Okay. Now, with the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938, that brought forth the emergency use authorization. Now it says the FDA can use the EUA authority under Section 564 of the that Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act to allow use of unapproved medical products or unapproved uses of approved medical products. What does that mean? So we have unapproved and approved medical products, but the medical products that have been approved to be used for a certain way, they can now be used in an inappropriate way. Dr. Miles Monroe called that abuse, when you use something that is not used for. So they were saying now they're under this same act that they were saying, we have to make sure that these things are safe and they're effective. We have to make sure that this kind of tragedy where 100 children, when 100 people died, many of whom were children, that something like this doesn't happen again. But within the same law, they were like, well, we'll have some unapproved medical products. So it kind of, avoided that law or that good deed that they were trying to do. So this is one of the loopholes, and it's important as it pertains to our day and age right now. Okay, so it says unapproved medical products or unapproved uses of approved medical products. It says to diagnose, treat, prevent serious or life-threatening diseases when certain criteria are met, including that there are no adequate, approved, or available alternatives. Now, typically the process that I was telling you about the FDA, they have a calendar, and I'm gonna show y'all the calendar. It's usually a 10-year process for a drug to be approved. Now, under this emergency use authorization, for my studies, what I found, some of the problems is the quality control. So what do I mean by quality control? So what they'll do is, it's like if you go to McDonald's. They have McDonald's, they're pretty much, I'm not gonna say they're universal. I'm surprised they don't have them in Amazon jungle yet, so the baboons can get a Happy Meal. But when you go to McDonald's in Switzerland, if you go there in Africa, if you go there in America, in Canada, if you want a double cheeseburger, because they have McDonald's University, that double cheeseburger is supposed to allegedly be made the same anywhere you go. So you're getting the same standard and you're getting the same quality. Well, with the EUA, the quality control goes out the window. Why? Because the way in which it's used or the way in which it's manufactured, because they are rushing these vaccination companies or these manufacturers to produce these vaccines, you don't get the same quality. And also, there's not enough studies yet. Well, I mean, some of them it is now, but before it wasn't a lot of studies, so they didn't know how effective it was. Now, we did hear them say they were safe and they were effective. Well, when they did the test, studies showed that they use men and women first who were in the military. And we know men and women in the military, their health standards are exceptionally higher than a typical civilian. So they use people whose bodies were able to fight off a lot of the bad stuff because, the military invested in them, millions of dollars into their physique and what they taught them. So of course they would have a higher efficiency rate in a body that was already extremely healthy. Especially, it wasn't a typical body. It was one that was trained and that was, like I said, it was extremely healthy. So whenever they were releasing the data, that's where they were getting it from. They were getting it from the men and women of arms who were already healthy. And so they were telling us safe and efficient or effective based on the military volunteers that they had for those trials, those clinical trials that they did. So one of the problems was quality control. The other one was effectiveness. Well, it goes without saying that if you don't have control of the quality, then you cannot control the effectiveness of the vaccine as well. And so that was one of the other issues. So in California, another study I was looking at, they had a batch of vaccines that was good. And so sometimes we would look on the news and we would see people take the vaccine on news and they would say, see, I'm fine. I took the jab here and nothing happened to me. And then there were times where it's not funny. There were times where we saw people who did it on national television, and what they would do, they would face plant. They would fall down, they would pass out. Some of them would wobble, they would lose control of their feet, all of which is on the label. And it tells you in the packaging, because remember, under this act, there had to be product labeling. They have to tell us what was in the products and how to go about making them so that they are safe and effective. So, people would pass out on TV when they took these shots. So how is it that we would have people who would say, it's safe? I didn't have a reaction. None of that stuff happened to me. I know 5 people who took it, but then we would see other people who took it and they had adverse reactions. Well, the quality control was the reason why. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to take us to this link real quick, and we're going to go to the FDA calendar that I was telling you about briefly, because I want you to see something real quick. So I'm going to follow this link. And this was one of the websites that I use whenever me and a couple of coworkers, we were trading on the stock market. I was telling them about how, certain medicines, because they're 10 years out, depending on what phase they're in, we could, once they get in phase 3, we would come here, investigate them, research them, and then we can make our trades here. So this is the new vaccine that they have, one of the newer ones. It's in phase 3. So you see how it started in the different phases here. And so this is for 2023, so it's relatively new. And so this is the Novavax. This is the company. So it's telling you this one here is a booster. And so I'm going to click on it. And so it tells you how much this stock is, $8 now. Tells you about, it shows you how it's trending. And of course, whenever we look at the times where it spiked, we can correlate that when we saw a spike in cases and things like that as well. So, yes, ma'am. Say it again. Oh, okay. Let me see. Can you guys still hear me? Now, are you able to see my screen at all? No? Okay. Give me 1 second. Hold on. Okay, there we go. I am getting it. Thank you for your patience. I really do appreciate it. There we go. Can you all see it now? Let me go back. Okay, so this is the FDA calendar. And what this is showing here is, excuse me. So this is showing one of the new vaccines that's coming out. And what this is a booster. Okay, so right here, it shows the stage that this vaccine is in. It's in phase 3. Remember, I said it's 4 phases. And it tells you about, the price of the stock. It tells you about the company that's doing it and everything. So this is the website that me and my coworkers would go to whenever we were trading on the market. We would come here and get information about medical technology, about stocks and companies and things like that, to see what was going on with the medicines and the technologies that were being released. And so let me show you guys something. So this is the company. It's called Novavax Inc. And it says here is a biotechnology company. The company promotes improved health globally through the discovery, development, and commercialization of what? Vaccines. To do what? Prevent serious infectious disease. Novavax vaccine candidates in the near-term pipeline, including both coronavirus vaccine candidate and seasonal quadrivalent influenza vaccine candidate, so NanoFlow, which are genetically what? Engineered, three-dimensional nanostructures. Y'all know what nanobites are? That is robotic technology of recombinant proteins critical to disease pathogenesis. So that was fancy for saying these are vaccines that they use for different things. And part of the ingredients of the vaccines is nanoparticles, or what we would call small quantum computer controlled robotics. Then it tells you a little bit about the headquarters of the company here. Tells you when it was founded, old company. Then it tells you about the website. So you can get more information there, okay? Here, I mean, you can look at it. It's showing, this is just the technical analysis. We're not going to worry about that. Now, what I want y'all to see is this here, phase 3. So it says phase 3, part 2, strain change data due to mid 2023. Phase 3 trial initiated December 21st, 2021. So the trial started 2 years ago. It says what was granted? EUA was granted for what? Adolescents aged 12 through 17. Noted August 19, 2022. EUA for first boosters was granted October 19, 2022. Phase 3 data reported that BA.1, which is a new strand of the COVID virus vaccine candidate, met its primary strain change endpoint noted November 8th, 2022. So it's saying that this vaccine evolved. So we're still in this phase because not the vaccine, the virus evolved. So we're in the same phase because what we were creating it evolved into something else. So we have to make something new for it. But what I wanted to show y'all here was that EUA was granted for. So what does the EUA mean again? Let me go back. The EUA means that it is an unapproved medical product, or it's approved and it can be used in a way that it's not supposed to be used. And it means that it circumvented the 10-year process. One of the problems with that is the quality control. Another problem is its effectiveness. Like they just said, this virus morphed it or transmutated into something else, and we have to create something else for it. So it's not effective. Okay, so there's another website. It gives a list of all of the emergency use authorization items that they have on the market right now. And so I want to read this to you all. This was May of 2013. So May 29, 2013, Secretary Kathleen Sebelius determined that the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome coronavirus poses a significant potential for a public health emergency that has a significant potential to affect national security or the health and security of the United States citizens living abroad. So this was in the Middle East in 2013. Hallelujah. Ain't nothing like a long, awkward silence or pause. So now we're going to go and follow this link real quick because I want you guys to see this as well. Okay. So here, there's a list, and this is that vaccine here. So here, what they're doing is they show us the emergency to my left, right here. This is the emergency. Let me zoom in for you guys. Can you see that better? Is that better? Can you all see that? Give me a thumbs up if you can see it. Hallelujah. I got one good thumb. Any other thumbs? Can y'all see that? Hallelujah. Okay, cool. I got a couple of thumbs. Thumb collector. So look, check this out. So over here to the left where it says all items, this is the emergency here on the left. And then in the middle, it tells you the products that were authorized. And then the rationale is to the farthest right. So it says here, May 29th, 2013, Secretary, she determined that the Middle East COVID posed a significant potential for health-related emergency that has significant potential to affect national security or the health and security of U.S. citizens living abroad. On the basis of this determination, the Secretary declared that circumstances exist justifying what? The authorization of emergency use of in vitro diagnostics for detection of the Middle East respiratory syndrome coronavirus. And this was 2013. And there have been many more of those since that date. Okay. So let me go back here. Let's continue on. So this is another act. This was in 1944. This is the Public Service Act. It says the federal government derives its authority for isolation and quarantine from the commercial clause of the U.S. Constitution under Section 361 of the Public Service Act, and it gives us the code there. It says the U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services. Remember that secretary because that's one of the four who control the mandates that go out to the states. And they control the mandates that go out federally and statewide. So the Secretary of Health and Human Services is authorized to take measures to do what? Prevent the entry and spread of communicable diseases. From foreign, and communicable just means transferable. It's the same word where we get a word communicate. You transfer information and wisdom from one person to another. Where you get communion from, like what we do with Yahweh, so on and so forth. So the spread of communicable diseases from foreign countries into the United States and between states. Now that's a key. Between states. So remember what we saw in the Middle East? We have to put up barriers for people over there to come to America. So then that way we won't get what they have. But not just that. We have to put up barriers between the states to protect the states from each other. So keep that in mind. It says authority for carrying out these functions on a daily basis has been delegated to who? The CDC. Interesting. Very interesting. So here we see the Secretary of Health and Human Services is the one that's authorized to do what? Take measures to prevent entry. Now, what did they do? They delegated the authority to who? The CDC. Now it says under Code 42 of this federal regulation, the CDC is authorized to do what? Detain. I need to stop double clicking. It's already highlighted. To detain, medically examine, and release persons doing what? Arriving into and traveling between states who is suspected of carrying these communicable diseases. Do any of you know someone who had a 14-day layover, or they called it a quarantine time, when they were traveling? There's a lot of people I know who had 14-day layover times, and they didn't take into account whether or not you had the money to be able to support yourself during that quarantine period. So the thing is here, it says those who are suspected. Now, why can they say that? They can say that because they didn't have any technology, and they're kind of hard pressed to have some now. And they're called countermeasures. And I'm gonna show y'all some that can detect whether or not you actually have COVID, because there are so many symptoms that are similar to what we would call the common cold. Similar to what we would call diabetes, similar to what we would call COPD. So because there's so many symptoms that the virus can produce in your body, it's hard to detect it. But if they suspect that you're a carrier, then you got a 14-day layover. But this is what they use. This is one of the legal things that they use, okay? Now it says, as part of its federal authority, the CDC routinely monitors persons doing what? Arriving at land borders crossings and passengers and crews arriving at U.S. ports of entry for signs or symptoms of communicable diseases. So what they're doing is they're checking at every entry point. And not just the CDC, what they're doing also is they are giving that authority to other people as well. So here it says, when alerted about an ill passenger or crew member by a pilot of a plane or captain of a ship, the CDC may detain passengers and crew as necessary to do what? Investigate whether the cause of the illness on board is a communicable disease. 14-day quarantine. So again, this is important to me because what I want y'all to understand is how these laws are used to make you forfeit what they would call the freedoms that you have. And I'm big on, us being nationalized citizens versus being corporate instruments. And I'm going to show y'all too later on how persons, like how we think a parent is a mother and a father. When you look in law, a parent is not that. A parent can be a corporation. Taco Bell has a parent. McDonald's has a parent. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has a parent. See what I'm saying? So parent is a legal term, and it's one of the instruments that's used for entrapment. But later on, we'll talk about that later. Now, this is the National Childhood Vaccination Injury Act of 1986. Now, the public call for this vaccine safety and informed consent protections in the vaccine system. So up until this point, there were a lot of injuries that was going on. And so what they did was they were like, well, whenever they're making us get these, what it shows here, mass vaccination systems, whenever they made a bunch of people get vaccines mandatorily, there was a lot of injuries that was going on and nobody knew what was being injected into their body. And it says, while the pharmaceutical industry called on Congress to shield them from civil liability for vaccine injury and deaths caused by federally licensed, remember that FDCA, that act, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938, is what made it to where they can use these instruments whether or not they were safe. Because if it was an emergency that was declared, they could use something that didn't go through that 10-year approval process to know that it was safe for the public to use. So here we see that the pharmaceutical industry, what did they do? They called on Congress to shield them from civil liability from the injuries from those vaccines. So it says here in response, Congress passed the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, giving partial liability protection to the vaccine industry and to doctors giving vaccines to children. So when you go to a doctor and you do get a vaccine, this is one of the reasons why it's easy for them to give it to you. It's not just the science. They know that they can't be sued. Now, if I'm delivering a product to you and I know that I'm held civilly liable to where you can take me to court, I might do more research before I give you the product. I'm just saying. Now, if you make it to where I have immunity from liability, it's safe. You can take it. It won't do that much harm, even though we don't know if this is a good or a bad batch. These vaccines are not Happy Meals. They are not made the same. There was no university that these manufacturers went to make these vaccines, especially when they're rushed by Congress to produce them. And I'm going to show y'all that as well. So what I wanted y'all to see was what this law did. So this is what it did. It gave parents vaccine benefits and risk information before their children were vaccinated. So they have to let you know what's in the vaccine before you put it in your body. Also, it says they kept written records of vaccine manufacturer names and lot numbers for each vaccine given. Why? So they can locate which vaccines are bad batches. Because those batches come with 50 million doses. And what happens is they'll sit. Some sit for days, some sit for months. Some of them are not made to sit for so long. So they have to refrigerate them. And some of them didn't read the instructions and they didn't refrigerate them, so they went bad. But if I spend $5 billion on vaccines and I don't want to throw away 500 million of them, because I'm selling those vaccines for $20 a pop. So you think I'm going to throw away what $1 billion because of a bad batch? Because remember, I could still use it whether it's been unapproved or not, but also I can use it in a way it's not supposed to be used. So I can still serve you the bad batch. Those of us who were involved in street life, we know what that would entail. If you gave somebody a bad batch of something, what would happen to you? So going forward, it says, so they had to keep written records, and that's why they kept those written records of the manufacturer names and the lot numbers for the vaccinations that were given. Enter serious health problems following vaccinations into a child's permanent medical record, so the doctors will know how to deal with them going forward. And report serious health problems following vaccination to the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. And we've heard about that over the last couple of years. That's the system where they record these events that happen to people. And, from what I've seen, by 2021, the U.S. Court of Claims awarded over $4 billion out of the funds that they have set aside for people who get injured from vaccines. $4 billion. Safe and effective. But you got to think about it. I've made hundreds of billions of dollars. So for me to pay out $4 billion in claims, it's like what we do with trucking. You can have a truck, you operate the truck, you make, let's say, $10,000 at the end of the week. But during that time of you making the $10,000, you may have $1,000 in claims. What's $1,000 to $20,000? It's nothing. So they paid out $4 billion to vaccine victims, not people who got the viruses for the vaccines, but the vaccine itself. $4 billion in claims paid out. And it says for their catastrophic vaccine injuries, although, what does it say? 2 out of 3 applicants have been denied compensation. 2 out of 3. So one person out of every 3 people who apply, only one person gets it. And all of the one peoples, I know that was just terrible. Out of all of the one peoples, $4 billion was paid out. Now imagine if every person who was injured from those vaccines got paid out. Going forward. Y'all still with me? All righty. Now this is the PrEP Act of 2005. All righty. So in 2005, President George W. Bush announced a national strategy to prepare for the influenza outbreak. Following the SARS and avian influenza, I know y'all remember that stuff. He warned that similar pandemic could reach an unprepared United States. So what he wanted to do was he wanted to stockpile, and he encouraged the vaccine innovation that what he did was he told the manufacturers, hey, this is part of my strategy. I want to stockpile vaccines so we have them on hand. So here what I highlighted was, however, at the time there was only one manufacturer in the US that could produce that vaccine, and so because it was only one manufacturer, they couldn't stockpile it. And it wasn't just because of that. It was also because of vaccine-related litigation had previously driven the vaccine manufacturers where? Out of the market. There were so many claims that it was only one vaccine manufacturer left in America because of so many people getting injured. Well, what did President Bush do? like they did in the 1930s, they called upon Congress to pass what? Another liability protection. They're like, hey, listen, we got to protect these guys. They're not going to produce vaccines if we cannot give them some type of shield so they cannot keep going to court because the stuff they're making is hurting people. So it says here, the intent was to insulate not just a part of it, but the entire medical countermeasures enterprise. Do you hear this? They're calling it an enterprise. This is not my words. I took this off of a government website. Medical countermeasure enterprise and healthcare systems from what? Liability concerns during the uncertain circumstance of emergency responses, i.e., emergency use authorization. So what was the result? In December 2005, the PrEP Act, it says it limits legal liability for losses relating to the manufacture, testing, development, distribution, administration, and use of medical countermeasures against chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear agents of terrorism, epidemics, and pandemics. Didn't they cover their bases? They listed everything that they could think of. So this is what that act did, and this is why you have to be careful going forward. And this is, I wanted to show you all of that because it led up to this. The act precisely confers immunity from both suits and liability. So no lawsuits, and you cannot hold them liable. Under federal and state law with respect to all claims for loss caused by, arising out of, or relating to, or resulting from the administration to or the use by an individual of a covered countermeasure. Immunity from suit means that a person generally cannot sue in state or federal court a covered person for, like we talked about, what would happen if you took the vaccine. Thus, instead of filing suit, the injured person's only remedy for their injury is to seek compensation. So they're like, hey, you can't sue anybody. Nobody's going to be held accountable for what they did. But what you can do is, even though one person out of 3 people will get compensated for their injury, you can come to this other system that they made, which is the Countermeasure Injury Compensation Program. So this system is used whenever they have an emergency use authorized product. The other one is used for, the immunizations that they make your children get, all 28 of them that they make your children get before they're the age of 2, So they have another compensation program that they made for those who get injured from the vaccines. So to me, what it's showing is they know that there's a high risk that you'll definitely be injured from the vaccine. Now, the next 2 slides, there's going to talk about what's covered. So here I highlight, and this is what I was telling you earlier about parents. So it says a manufacturer includes a contractor or a subcontractor of a manufacturer, a supplier or a licensor of any product, intellectual property. A manufacturer is an intellectual property. That's a thought, saints. It says the design, development, clinical testing, investigation, manufacturing of a covered countermeasure, and any and all of the parents, subsidiaries, affiliates, successors, and the list goes on and on. The person who carried it, because there would be they were in court for a while, so they knew the different avenues that they got sued through. So whenever they made this new one, they covered all the bases. Anybody who had their hands on it at all, from the maker to the manufacturer, to the person who put the label on there, to the plant that put plastic on there, to the truck driver, to the truck driving company, the owner of that company that transported it, all of those were considered as covered persons. And when you look at the list, most of these persons are companies. And that's another list of persons. Now, they even had the covered countermeasures. So look at this. Covered countermeasures are any antiviral or any other drug, any biological, diagnostic, or any other device or vaccine used to treat, diagnose, cure, prevent, or mitigate COVID-19 or the transmission of SARS-CoV-2 or a virus mutating therefrom. A virus mutating therefrom, that would be Eris, that would be Omicron, that would be the Alpha, the Delta strain, so on and so forth, or any device used in the administration of such product, and all components and constituent materials of any such product. Covered countermeasure must be qualified pandemic or epidemic products. So what will qualify them is the EUA, or security countermeasure, or drugs, biological products, or devices authorized for investigational or emergency use. It says, as those terms are defined in the PrEP Act and the FD&C Act. So they took these laws and these acts and they compounded them to create a barrier of protection around themselves. And they used the law to do it. So the same law that they used to protect you, they created, they used lawmakers to create loopholes so that they can give you stuff that was harmful, even though they made the stuff because it was injuring people. But they created laws to build a corporate shield around themselves to protect them from suits. And they're like, well, only thing you can do is, go to the countermeasure injury system and report your event, and hopefully you get compensated, or go to the vaccine, the VAERS system, and report it there so you can get compensated for it. So what I want to do right now is, because the next section is the hierarchy, I want to stop there. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want to open it up for questions. Yeah, let's open it up for questions. So are there any questions in the chat?
No, we don't have any questions in the chats, but if anybody has questions or even statements that you want to make, just go ahead and raise your hand and Charles will unmute you so we can begin to dialogue. This is the point of this whole Vax Files show. We want to begin to dialogue about the information that was communicated so we can have downloads of strategy from God. So that's what the whole show is about. Okay, so, well, Chris said the FDA is evil. Yes, Chris, it is. That was a statement from Chris, so yeah. But if anybody wants to speak, please raise your hand so Charles can unmute you so we can get this going.
And I do want to say something. That this is the way, because remember, what we're doing is now we're at the point where we're exchanging information. Even if it is something that you know or that you can't expound upon, we want to give you room before we continue. Because like I said, I don't want to just like dump it all on you, because there was a lot to take in, but what I wanted y'all to see was how they're using the laws that they made to protect you. They're using them now against you again. And so if you're dealing with an entity, whether it's a government, a corporate entity, a state, local, municipality, whatever it may be, if it's using its own word or law against you, it's violating its own word, why in turn do you think that, or why would you feel hard pressed to trust them? If they're willing to create loopholes to violate their own law. And we see this all the time. So just keep that in mind. But yes, dialogue. I would like, if you have questions or a comment, please, let me know. I'm gonna unmute you. So then that way we can exchange because we got to get to the point where we're exchanging. They don't allow us to talk. Sorry about that. So they don't allow us to communicate. So we want to communicate on this platform. So come on with it.
Chris has his hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Chris.
All right, yeah. So it's awesome seeing y'all and hearing y'all. And this is great information because I've also recently been hearing more and more about this, and it is coming more and more to light. The light grows brighter and brighter, and and in our time, and it is unfortunate to see it unfolding. Um, but for those, but for us believers, we know, what the Father has, and we and understand know what is to come. And it is sad to see it happening. And these laws they're using, it's like they're doing it, as you said, to protect them, but also to use it against us. It's like they're trying to herd us in a direction. They're trying to anyway, and I see it happening, and it is sad. Um, and I think that the best way to do is to, I guess for lack of a better term, is to unplug from the matrix, as some would say, and be self-sustainable away from those
Mhm.
systems. Just like in all of history of human, our ancestors and everybody's ancestors, they sustained for themselves. I know that in a piece of history that, you know, when a person has land, it was only the wealthy who could afford to have grass, a lawn, whereas everybody else, their lawn and their grass was gardens and food and livestock, and that's a luxury, uh, or supposed to be, or was. But yeah, my
Mhm.
encouragement would be to be, self sustainable, have a community of people, to be together, and and I think that's the best way, in my opinion. But yeah, I guess
Indeed.
that's it. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing, Chris. And I definitely share your sentiment. Amongst the many solutions that we have, that is definitely top on the list. We want to make sure that we do utilize the power and unity. So then that way we could circumvent a lot of what's coming down the pike, because
Yeah.
there's a lot going on. Um, so yeah, I definitely agree with what you said, and I appreciate you sharing, bro.
No, there's nothing
Now, were
else
there
in
any
chat.
more? Okay. So what I want to do is I did something for those who are in Oklahoma. And so we went over the history. Let me do this. Alrighty. But let me tell you a little bit about the virus, and then I want y'all to see, because initially I did this for a body of people who are in Oklahoma, and so I didn't do it for a national level, but some of these things will apply, and I want to show y'all a map, and I want y'all to see what is what's been released in America, nonetheless. So, but in order for you to understand, I want you to see what is going on with the virus. So, me. So the COVID virus. The coronavirus, it's an RNA virus. Now, there's a difference between an RNA and a DNA virus. So the RNA viruses, they will inhabit the cell. And what some of them will do is they will either inhabit the cell and they will destroy the cell. So the cell will get so full of the components from the virus will make the cell explode. So what will happen is what will ensue is cellular death. So some RNA viruses, they get into the cell and they either will release sickness and illness over time, or they will cause the cell to die. And that's why some people will lose their sense of smell, because those smell receptors, some of them die. Those cells in your nose where the olfactory system is, they'll die, because that's the area where the virus is. Some people, it'll be hard for them to breathe, because if the virus makes its way to the lungs, then those cells will die. And so they don't have the alveoli to be able to take in air and remove waste out of the body. So they will begin to essentially suffocate or have a hard time breathing. So also, coronavirus has a unique ability called multitrophism. So what that means is it gives the virus the ability to target a bunch of different organs at one time. So it doesn't just like, it's not like Ebola or HIV or something like that, that I have to get to the heart and that's the only place I can be. It can be in the heart, cause myocarditis. It'll cause heart arrhythmias, where irregular heartbeats and stuff like that. It can get in the lungs and cause issues in the lungs. It can get in the nose and cause issues in the nose. And that's why you've seen a bunch of different symptoms, because the virus, it can operate in multitrophism. So it can attack more than one organ at one time. Coronavirus, it's in the same category as obligate intracellular parasites. So the reason why that's important is because it goes into the cell. That's what makes it obligate. And it's intracellular, meaning it's inside of the cell, but it's a parasite. So the reason why that's important is because some of the medical remedies, like one of the things they were using was a dewormer. Some worms, they are intracellular parasites. And so whenever somebody would use dewormers, they would find themselves healed or cured from the COVID virus. This was the reason why, because it's classified as essentially an internal or intracellular parasite. Keep that in mind. So the virus is highly infectious. So typical viruses like Ebola, it can affect 1 to 3 people. So let's say I have Ebola, I cough, I'm in a house with my family. So let's say it's 8 of us in a house. And if I cough, out of the 8 people, I have the ability to affect 2 people with Ebola. With COVID is infectious, so it can affect 12 to 20 people from one person. Now, until I had knew that, I wasn't big on the mask mandates and stuff like that. And they don't stop the virus from spreading. What it'll do is it mitigates your exposure to it. So if somebody is coughing in your face and they have 100% COVID, it's going to bring those numbers down to about 30% COVID exposure. So, you can take that information and use it, But what I'm saying is that it's highly infectious amongst other viruses. So the last thing, the virus has evolved. It has evolved in ways to where it can shut down interferon production in the cells that they affect. And so what interferon does in the body is it helps your immune system to kick on, releasing immunoglobulin factors that fight viruses. So what it does is when it's in the cell, it shuts your cell's ability down to call for help. So it's like having a burglar come into your house and cutting your phone lines. So you can't call for help. That's what the vaccine does. I mean, not the vaccine, I'm sorry. That's what the virus does. Okay. Now, this is a map of America, and what this data shows is the different variants that are in the different states. So in America right now, there's over 41 variants and subvariants in America right now. 41. So that means there's 41 different types of COVID running around America right now. And the subvariants, and that's the families. And I had got this picture from the CDC. And so when you look up here to the right at the lineage, it tells you the percentage or which one is the dominant one right now. And that's EG.5, and that's the one that they're saying is Aries, which allegedly came from Canada. Now this one here, like I said, this was for the for Oklahoma. So right now in Oklahoma, of the 40 that are running rampant in America, 9 of them are here in Oklahoma. And so, you know, you got the XBB.1.3.1, the EG.5, that's Aries, the XBB, they're all of the Omicron family, all of those X's and the BBs and stuff. So they're of the Omicron family. So that's what we have in Oklahoma. And that's important because if we know what type of virus it is, we'll know how to deal with it, because they do different things. So like, let's say that Aries attacked the heart primarily, and XBB or this Delta variant attacked the liver, or the Omicron attacked the eyes. We will know what symptoms we are going to experience if we do get it, and then also how to combat it. So that's the reason why this is important to me, for combative purposes, so we can take an offensive approach. Okay. Now, this is very brief because there's a lot when it pertains to natural immunity versus vaccine-induced immunity. Now, in short, I ain't gonna read this, but and remember I was telling you about the interferon. Hallelujah. So when it comes to natural immunity, that's your God-given immunity. It's what you were born with. So from the time you begin to breastfeed, when your mother is transferring her immune system to the child, all the way up when you're touching stuff and putting everything in your mouth, you're building your natural immunity. Now, you know, and of course it has a place where it reaches to where it's still going to be building over time, but for the most part, you're going to be able to withstand and conquer anything that you encounter if you keep the conditions right. Now, when it comes to vaccine-induced immunity, they inoculate you or give you a part of the virus, so that way your body can build up antibodies or agents that will combat it. And that's the B cells and the T cells. So they want your body to build up those B and T cells so it can recognize it and fight it off whenever it encounters it. Now, that would seem like it would be a good theory. However, the problem with that is, like I showed y'all, because the COVID, the virus, it can mutate. So we've seen XBB, we've seen Omicron, we've seen Aries, we've seen Alpha, Delta, Beta, we've seen the Greek alphabets. And because it can mutate, that means that if I get vaccine-induced immunity, I have to get a vaccine for every single one of the 41 plus strands that are running rampant in America, or one of the 9 or 14 that are running rampant in Oklahoma. So that's one of the problems with vaccine-induced immunity. The other problem is whenever your body encounters it, it dissects the whole thing, not just the part that they put in there, the whole thing. So what happens when it dissects the whole thing? Anything it can morph or turn into, your body is already familiar with. So one of them is a partial remedy. The other one is whole. So the natural immunity breaks down the whole thing, versus the vaccine-induced immunity, it's only a part or a piece. So let me just paint a picture real quick. So y'all know I'm big on sugar, not consuming it, but I'm big on giving, you know, you guys information about sugar. Now, sugar is not bad when you find it in its natural state, natural immunity. When you find it in its natural state, when it has fiber, vitamins, and minerals, and when it has the what we would call water H2 constituents with it. Now, when you take it out of that environment that it's in with the fiber and the vitamins and minerals and the water, then you get a concentrated substance that becomes harmful because it's been taken out of an environment where it was whole. So it affects the pancreas, so on and so forth, type 2 diabetes, so on and so on. So natural immunity is better because you get access to immunity longer, for one, so it lasts longer. For two, it's the whole thing. So it's the whole thing plus some variants. So it's like if you get exposed to Omicron, then you get protection from several different variations of Omicron versus you having to get a shot for every single variation of Omicron. So that's primarily the difference. Natural immunity is better. So we're going to go to this video real quick. I want you guys to look at this video.
If you pay more than $7 a month for electricity, information from the CDC today, a new report out just this week says vaccines, get this, were less effective than natural immunity against the Delta variant. Fox 31 digital reporter DJ Summers went through that report very closely, and DJ, what did you find out about it? It's a complicated study with a really simple conclusion. You have better protection against the Delta if you were previously infected than if you were vaccinated. A previous infection was 6 times stronger than a vaccine alone during Delta. That's because two things happened. Vaccines got less effective and natural immunity got more effective.
So let me pause him right there. Why did vaccines get more effective? Now, we're going to do this.
The sound was too low, bro. The sound on that was too low.
Oh, okay. Okay, hold on one second. Let me go back.
From the CDC today, a new report out just this week says vaccines, get this, were less effective than natural immunity against the Delta variant. Fox 31 digital data reporter DJ Summers went through that report very closely. And DJ, what did you? Really simple conclusion. You have better protection against Delta if you were previously infected than if you were vaccinated. A previous infection was 6 times stronger than a vaccine alone during Delta. That's because two things happened. Vaccines got less effective and natural immunity got more effective. Take a look. That vaccine got 4 times less effective alone during the Delta wave as beforehand.
So now, the reason why I wanted to show that video was because what we got to understand is we're more than conquerors. The way that we're created to adapt. Now, it was more effective because, remember, this thing can mutate. So after, you created a vaccine that wasn't really effective anyway, but you want me to take the vaccine. So when I do take it and it mutates, it turns into something different, something that's a little bit more wiser, because you got to think, if this thing can inhabit your cell, stay in the cell, and over time release sickness throughout the body, that to me shows some level of intellect, some level of intelligence to where it went from just killing people and just, eradicating cells to, okay, I can just sit back in this cell and release illness over time. I don't have to just eradicate this person, which is what we're seeing now. We're seeing longer terms where people are dealing with it a lot longer than they used to before, and less people dying from them and having more symptoms for longer periods of time. So it's showing that this virus is evolving, and also it's able to move and operate differently than it did when we first encountered it, and that's important. So we've seen here in this video that the natural immunity, and that's not the only one. There's a lot of videos. There was a video where the somebody from the CDC, she was a head scientist. She came out and she said that natural immunity is better than vaccine-induced immunity, because it's something that can't be disproven. Because your immune system, it's a system versus the vaccine. Your immune system is a couple of different organs and structures in your body, and they all work together in unison. So there's the unity component again, like what Chris was talking about earlier. So you have a component of unity operating in the body to show you higher efficacy and efficiency versus just the singularity or the singular thing against the virus. So you see the immune system and then you see the vaccine. So let me go back. Now, these are some of the pharmaceuticals because, this part is important as well. So these are some of the pharmaceuticals that have been used for COVID. Ivermectin, we heard about that. Hydrochloroquine, we heard about that. Cortisone, we heard about that as well. Next to them is just information about them and what they actually do for the body. Like cortisone, patients with severe critical COVID-19 develop overstimulation of the immune system, which can be very harmful to their health. Corticosteroids reduce this overstimulation, and which helps balance the immune system response so that they are effective and do not cause damage to the person themselves. So not all pharmaceuticals are bad. And if necessary, these are some things that could be used. Remember, we talked about interferon and what the virus does. It shuts down the cell's ability to produce what? Interferon. So alpha interferon has been considered a potential therapeutic strategy to treat COVID-19 disease, mainly because the innate immune system rapidly produces interferon as the first line of defense to combat viral infections. So this is just a synthetic version of what your immune system would already do. And this one here is called Paximune. It says it catches and coats the virus inside the nose. Remember, we talked about if that's the site of infection, you'll lose your scent. So if this is the site of the infection, it catches and coats the virus inside the nose from where it can be eliminated via the usual routes, and that's blowing your nose or swallowing it, and your digestive system will remove it. Secondly, because the virus is encapsulated in the spray's viscous coating, it is prevented from being uptaken into the body. So, what it does is it will stop the virus from going further into the body, because this type of spray that they have is viscous, meaning it's like a gel-like substance, and it will catch and coat the virus so it can be removed out of the body. Some of the natural modalities are, pretty much boosters. So the ones that I have here, there was a lot more, but I didn't have enough room to put them all here. So some of the ones to look into would be the vitamin A, the B complexes, vitamin C, vitamin P, and those are the vitamins. The amino acids would be glutathione, lysine, and methionine. Those are the amino acids. The minerals is geranium, selenium, sulfur, and zinc. When you look at the herb family, it's alfalfa, andrographis. That's what they used in Thailand, and that's what they use whenever the breakout happened. What andrographis does, it will go to the, because most vaccines have a protein envelope that encases the actual virus. So it's like we're spirits, but we have a soul and we live in a body. So this is my physical house for my spirit. The protein envelope is the physical house for the vaccine, for the virus. And so andrographis dissolves that house so that it can be protected. So you know how they say there's wolves in sheep's clothing? That sheep's clothing is removed by andrographis. Burdock is another, dandelion, because it enhances your liver's ability to do what God designed it to do. Red raspberry leaf, so on and so forth. And then there's a list of supplements there as well. And what we're going to do over these Vax files, we're going to go into detail about vitamin A and how it helps your immune system. Vitamin B, how it helps your immune system. So I don't just want to list those there. I want you to understand why they're important. At the top, I put Cornerstone Health Principles. And that's the air quality, nutrition, stress management, etc. If you go to my website, it's healthformation.com, and you click on the Cornerstone Health tab, what you'll see there is all of these principles that govern health. And so if you operate in these principles, what you'll do is you'll boost your immune system, because you're creating the conditions for your immune system to operate at its optimal rate. And so it's one way for us to take back control over our health and to boost our immune system. Okay. Now, the last thing I want to show you guys is this is Project Next Gen. You know, Biden's administration, they put out a $5 billion government contract. For those of you who know me, we do government contracting. But so here, this is SAMS.gov. This is the place where we get those contracts. Here, I'm gonna take you there real quick. So I want you guys to see. As a matter of fact, so this is the RFI, means request for information. So it shows a response date here. So they're expecting a response. Well, this is not, anyhow, let me just go. So what they're doing is, it says that they're issuing, remember, this is the Department of Health and Human Services. They're issuing this request for information to collect feedback from current and potential biopharmaceutical partners. Information collected from this RFI will serve as a continued market research for possible future programs where BARDA would partner with the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Disease, as well as other organizations, to achieve the pandemic preparedness goals set forth by the U.S. government. So these are the documents, and they talk about what it is that they're looking for. And even though we see that these are backdated, they're still active right now. So this is the project that Joe Biden had signed a $5 billion deal for. That's one of them. Let me see. And this is another one. So this contract has been out since March 4th, 2020. And so they've been making amendments and changes and amendments and changes all the way up until May 1st of 2023. So this is another contract that they put out, and they're requesting partners and people to help with not just manufacturing, but distribution, not with distribution, with dissemination, with inoculating, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different things that they're trying to get that are coming down the pike. Let me go back. So that's Project Next Gen. That's the $5 billion that they're planning to spend to get vaccines to a neighbor near you. Now, this talks about knowing the risk, and we'll go into detail about that. Because remember, the FDAC Act from 1938 stipulated they had to, no, it was the Vaccine Injury Act. What it does is you have to tell us what's in the vaccinations. So here, I got this from one of the vaccines. And when I looked at the ingredient list, they also showed me some of the things that they call them a wide spectrum of vaccine complications. And it says that have been identified and acknowledged in medical literature by the Institute of Medicine and the National Academy of Science. So these are some of the things that can happen. And this is why it's important for us to know. You got to know the risk. So it says brain inflammation, acute encephalopathy, it's a long word, encephalopathy. Y'all know I've been practicing. Chronic nervous system dysfunctions, and that's whenever the trembles and the shaking and things like that. Anaphylaxis, bronchial neuritis, shock, death. It says smallpox, polio, measles, thrombocytopenia, and that's deficiency of the platelets in the blood. This causes bleeding into tissues, bruising, and slow blood clotting after injury. Interesting. So on and so forth. So these are some of the risks. This just shows the number of vaccines that are in development and the numbers of those that are coming. So that's over pretty much 400 vaccines that are coming. So here, and this is the last thing I want to show. This is one of the vaccines. So I got this from the website that talks about how to use the vaccines, which they provide to people who buy the vaccines in bulk, but I was able to get this information. So it talks about, you know, how to do the proper dosing, how to mix it and everything. It says that this vaccination supplied with multiple dose vials with purple caps and labeled with purple borders must be diluted before use. For intramuscular, that's when you get it injected here. Intramuscular injection only. So remember, you have to have the instructions on how to use them and what they're for. But also, you have authorization to use them in a way that they were not intended to be used. Remember that. So it says dosage forms and strengths, suspension for injections after preparation, a single dose. Known history of a severe allergic reaction, which I showed y'all the list of some of the adverse effects. Now here it says warnings and precautions. So let's see what it says. Post-marketing data. What was the post-marketing data? Now, remember, I took y'all to the FDA calendar website where they talked about the different phases that it was in. You can see some of those clinical trials. And on that same website, if you have a membership, what you can see is in the clinical trials, these things that happened to people who took that vaccination or that inoculation. So post-marketing data demonstrates increased risk of what? Myocarditis and pericarditis. So the myo is the muscle, the peri is the barrier or the border between the tissue and the fluid system of the heart. So there'll be swelling between that part as well. So it says particularly within 7 days following the second dose, syncope, fainting may occur, like we talked about, in association with the administration of injectable vaccines, including this one. Procedures should be in place to avoid injury from fainting. So they're like, get ready because they are going to pass out. I almost said something, but I ain't gonna get in trouble. Let me go on. Adverse reaction. So in clinical studies of participants 16 to 55 of age, the most common reported reverse reactions were pain at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle pain, joint pain, fever at the injection site. Sorry. In clinical studies, 56 and older, pain at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle pain, joint pain, chills, injection at the swelling site, fever, and injection site redness. Adolescents, pain at the injection site, fatigue, headache, chills, muscle pain, fever, joint pain, injection site swelling, injection site redness. So when one of the things I found that was interesting was when you look at the participants, even though they show the same stuff, you know, the joint pain, the fatigue, the headaches, it shows you the difference, the people, how it affected everybody differently. And when you look at the youth, it affected the youth differently than it affected the adults. So, you know, I could say, well, I didn't pass out when I had it. Well, you're in a different age group, so it affected that age group differently. When you were younger, you would say, well, I didn't really get swelling at the site. It didn't swell me up. But most of the youth were reporting that there was fatigue after they had took the shot. So with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I want to open the floor up again for questioning or any of the such sort.
So Now, is this the conclusion of the presentation and now we're just in the Q&A part, or did you have more to present?
That's all I want to present for now.
Okay. And then guys, he's going to go more in depth because we're going to do a series of these. So he is going to go more in depth on some of the things that he showed us tonight, because that is a lot of information and it's very intricate information that actually needs to be broken down. So whether y'all believe it or not, the information that Charles gave us tonight was surface, whether y'all believe it or not, because each one of those topics that we were on, you can go, it's like an onion. You can go layer after layer after layer, in depth, in depth, in depth. There was a lot of parts I wanted to be like, I wanted to say stuff on, because it goes right into presentations that I've done as well, as far as these things. But we're definitely going to be going into some more stuff over a series of times. We're going to do a series of these Vax File shows. But we are opening up the floor for any commentary, any statements, any questions. That was a lot of information. It should have fostered something, you know, in your minds. So does anybody have anything they want to say at all?
Hallelujah anyhow.
Chris has his hand up. Okay.
Mm.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right. Brother Charles, I was curious, as individuals, what could we start doing to, you know, help our immune systems? Like what would you suggest we could start doing to combat these you know, viruses now?
That gotcha. So that's a good question, and it's important because what you want to do is, you know, you want to pretty much, we're at war, so you want to be as preemptive as possible. So you would strike first. So one of the ways that you'll be able to improve immunity is you got to check your condition. So like you said, what I would do first is simple stuff. You know, clean your home. Make sure your house is clean. Make sure you have good air quality in your home. Make sure that, you know, you vacuum out your window sills and you clean them out. You can begin to learn about, you know, lemon and how lemon kills bad bacteria. And it can be used, you can put it on your skin. You could drink it, put it in your stomach. You can use it as a cleaning product. So, you know, it's something that will be, it's a universal agent as it pertains to health. So outside of making sure your house is clean, you know, manage your stress better. You know, remove the things in your life that you can remove that don't need to be there, that's causing you stress.
Yeah.
You know, forgiveness is another thing. And these are free things. Forgiveness, you know, forgive yourself. If there's somebody that you're holding aught against, you need to let it go, because when you hold on to those things, they affect your immune system.
Hmm.
Stress incurred
Indeed.
affects the immune system. Yep.
Yes, it does. Yes.
And you know, that's why scripture talks about forgiveness and why it's so important. You know, like how we say it's not for the other person, it's really for you. From a biological perspective, it is definitely for you. So, you know, forgiveness. Now, when you move to the practical things, you know, like I said, COVID is highly infectious, you know, so you want to make sure that, you know, you use the lemon. But so for the immune system, that's where the vitamin C will come in, the vitamin A, those amino acids I was talking about. That's why they're important. So you want to enhance your immune system. You're going to see a surge, and I'm not speaking this, it's just going to happen because that's the way that it's made. It's a seasonal thing,
Right.
because we don't have influenza during the summer. And there's a reason for that. So your blood begins to slow down when it's cold.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like, let's say we're used to the trash truck coming once a week. Now, what happens if it starts coming once every month? We all would need more trash cans because trash is going to build up. So it's like that in the body. Anytime it gets cold, the lymphatic system, the blood system, because your blood not only brings oxygen, minerals, and vitamins to different parts of your body through the capillary network, but it also removes waste from the body. So does your lymphatic system. So if it's slowed down, or if there's stagnation because of the temperature outside, not to mention the other factors that can slow it down, like stress management, like your eating,
Yeah.
then it's going to be harder for you to remove waste from your body. So what your body's going to do is it's going to start to utilize the it's going to start to utilize your respiratory system to get it out, because it can't use the circulatory system anymore. It can't use the digestive system anymore because that has slowed down. But you're still accumulating trash every day from stress, from a lack of exercise, from depression, from the
Right.
food that you eat. So your body's going to say, okay, well, we can't use the circulatory system or the digestive system or the skin to remove waste. Now we got to use the respiratory system. And that's
Right.
why you start coughing and sneezing, because your body is still having to remove the waste. So one of the things you can do, and it's going to improve your immune system anyway, when it's cold, eat soup,
Mm-hmm.
eat some vegetable soups,
Yeah.
drink more tea. You know, there's turmeric teas, there's ginger teas, and if you don't want to buy them, which I wouldn't buy them, I would use like a high quality seasoning, and I would take that and put it in some water and drink it. That's what I would do.
Why would you recommend the seasoning versus like the actual food product itself?
The reason why I would recommend the seasoning is because any like tea or something like that, there's lower regulations on that stuff. And I'm not saying that they do everything by the book, but if you got a seasoning is more regulated than teas are.
Okay.
So I
I
would
didn't know that.
go the seasoning. Yeah, because it's still a herb, but it's a food item
Right.
versus the tea. Even though they sell it as even though they sell it as a tea, the regulations on seasonings is different than it is for the teas. Because you see seasoning everywhere, you don't see teas everywhere.
Right.
You know, so if you wanna go the tea route, you gotta get it from I would recommend getting it from a herbal practitioner if you want to go the tea route. So drink more tea, get a better quality water. All of these things are going to either directly or indirectly affect your immune system. You know, practice breathing. Take back dominion
Yeah.
over how you breathe. Breathe in through your nose, because God put hairs in your nose to operate as filters to catch and trap harmful, substances. He created plants, snake plants and spider plants, to do the same thing that your nose does. Capture foreign antigens in it. I mean, not antigens, but foreign bacteria and viruses in the air, captures them and consumes them so that they don't even get to make it into your body. But if they do, you're not doing a lot of, you know, um, chest breathing in and out of your mouth. You're using your nose because it's a filter. Not only is it a filter, it also warms the air up as it goes into the body. So, we have a lot of free things that we can use, but what you want to do is eat more soups, eat more salads, drink more teas. So those things are going to directly and indirectly affect your immune system.
It's interesting you say that it's also a food item, because one of my instructors, she told us that whenever she's making or preparing like food for her family, depending on what the situation is or like their state, however their body is in, she'll add certain seasonings to help with that, with the food, because she knows what their compounds are and what they do and what they can help. And I just thought that was interesting. So that's a good little bit of information to, I guess, think about.
And that was a good question, so, like I said, but if you get it fresh, it's better,
Yeah.
so I would say get accustomed to the taste of ginger, get accustomed to start to train your taste buds. We don't have to wait till it's too late.
Right.
We don't have to wait because we have a door right now. It's still warm. So start now while your system is actively, it's easier for your body to remove waste whenever it's in liquid form versus you having to cough it out. It's a lot easier. It's not as ugly. You sit there and cough yellow and green stuff out. It's coming all out your eyes, and you got to miss work. You got a fever now because your body is temperature internally is heated up to try to push that stuff out in an attempt to liquefy. I mean, you don't have to put yourself through all of that by starting now, you know. And like I said, in the wintertime, you have to change your diet. You're in a different season. You can't eat summer foods in the wintertime. The temperature outside is different. Your circulation in your body is different. You know, what your body is doing in the wintertime is not doing in the summertime. Your body's not trying to keep you cool in the winter. It's trying to warm you up. So that means that what your body was doing to warm you up is doing something different, is accessing different things in order to keep the internal organs warm. So that's why your blood system, the circulation is slowing down. The body is more concerned about keeping the internal organs warm. So your body, it's a system. And so certain systems, they turn on and off. Stop eating late at night, especially in the winter, you know. All of these things, they're going to indirectly help with your immune system. And then, you know, if I was to ask, what is the immune system? What would you say? You know, we got to educate ourselves. What is the immune system? What is it comprised of? Does it have anything to do with my stomach? Does it have to do with my skin? What is the immune system, you know? So we need to educate ourselves and take our bodies and take our health seriously, you know? Because if not, then we'll be victimized. You know, like I showed y'all on that website, they make a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. I didn't show y'all their earnings for that company. If y'all would have seen the earnings, y'all would have been like, well, no wonder why they sold the federal government 2 billion vaccines for $2 a piece. No wonder. So yeah,
Now
you know,
you're going to
we
be
gotta,
going into a lot of the actual things that we can do to build up our immune systems when we get into the health part on some other segments. You're going to go deep into that, right? So people can know some of the
yes.
things. Yes, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure people
So
know that.
Cool.
yeah, and so as we go forward, yeah, we're gonna be very targeted. So today was just a
Mhm.
brief overview of everything. Even those laws that we looked at, some of the loopholes, I wanted to hone in on that so we can know how we got to where we are now. And like I said before, understanding those laws and those loopholes, then you can understand why some of the freedoms that we have are being taken away and what's to come later on down the line. Because you got to think about it. There's a reason why they want to make a universal vaccine. There's a reason why the federal government is willing to put out a $5 billion contract to acquire manufacturers and everything else so we could get a lot of COVID vaccine. I didn't even get to tell you about some of the countermeasures they have. They have a vaccine that you just rub on your skin. So there's a lot of different things that they're doing now that's going to come in the next couple of months. But you know, we're going to be ready and prepared for that. So we have to do, because if you don't do it for yourself, nobody else is going to do it. I can't sit here where I'm at and make your immune system increase. I can't do that. It's impossible. If I could, I would, but I can't. So that's something that you have to do. I can't force you to learn about what the immune system is. I can't do that. Because if you knew, then some of the foods that you eat, you wouldn't even eat. And you would understand why the standard American diet, I want to say, is designed to be able to make you sick. Because McDonald's is not food. Burger King is not food. Pizza Hut is not. That's not food. The definition of food is something that you take into your body that does two things. It increases your quality of life, and it preserves your quality of life. So it's building and it's maintaining what's being built. McDonald's does not do that. Burger King does not do that. Fruits and vegetables do that. And all of that stuff too. So, as we go forward, we'll talk about why they made genetically modified foods. We'll talk about how they have food that already has vaccines in the genetics of the food. And they've been doing that since 1970. Perfected it in 2010, getting ready to release it now. Because we believe, anywho, I don't want to talk about that. So yeah. Were there any other questions?
There's no questions in the chats, comments, like one said, thank you for this information. Another said, yes, can't wait for, the next show for, some more of that information as far as, the immune system and what we need to do to build up and stuff like that. So yeah. And then also, guys, I just put my information, my contact information in the chat. So if anybody wants to talk outside of this, if anybody wants to one-on-one talk about some stuff or has any ideas or anything that they would like talked about on these back shows, or know somebody that y'all feel we should have on these shows that you feel like needs to be heard, my name is Tracy White. Contact me. My number is right there, okay? Because this is not just a one-man show. This is a collaboration. We have to understand what's coming down the pike. We need everybody, okay? We need everybody's, I was about to say everybody's information. We need everybody's, not information, but everybody's cooperation. Because look at what is against us, okay? Yes. And I have put Charles's website in there earlier. Taki had asked for it earlier. He just reposted his Health Formation website. Go on there, look at that stuff. He does consults on there as well. So definitely go to that site and check that out. Okay, Taki's still on. Girl, I thought you was gone because you on your iPad now. Okay, great. So yeah. So guys, we are about to wrap it up because we are going to go into depth in some more things. So Charles, anything else you want to say?
There was I did read a comment and someone said, let me see. Someone said it's already here. My cousin caught it last weekend. Don't know if she got it from the food she ate or the person who prepared it at McDonald's. Wow. And that is true. And that's why earlier when I was showing the map for Oklahoma, we got, a number of variants running around. But in America total, right now, it's about 46 different strands of the virus running around in America. And so, one of the things we got to be aware of is how contagious it is. Like in the sense of, COVID is very resilient, and I'm going to go over that, how if it's on the surface of something, it's going to stay on the surface. And if you touch that surface and you go to, like, let's say I touch the surface at McDonald's, touch the surface, I go home, I touch this wall, it's going to be on this wall, I touch my desk, going to be on my desk, I touch my laptop, it's going to be on my laptop, which is interesting because most viruses are not like that. So this one is, and it's been around. It was documented in like the early 1800s, So, I mean, there's a lot with that, but we're going to go into detail about those things later on. So, yeah, it is already here. And like I said, some of the things you can do, manage your stress better. You got to eat better. Go outside and get, especially if you're melanated, if you're of dark pigmentation, you need to go and get at least 2 hours of sun, preferably between, 8 to 10 o'clock. Because those UV rays, there's 3 types that come from the sun, but you only need one. Because one of them is not only going to produce the precursor to vitamin D, but it's going to help with your immune system. So Black men and Black women or African Americans, y'all need to be in the sun. You need to get sunlight. If it's hard for you to get sun, even if you're Caucasian or white, you need sunlight too. Now, if you work in your office and it's hard for you to get sunlight, you need to get what's called a full spectrum lamp or a light bulb. I have one. So if you work in the office and it's hard for you to get outside, or you're downtown where there's a bunch of skyscrapers, sun blockers, then you need to get you a full spectrum light or a lamp bulb, a lamp or a light bulb. So then that way, what it does is it imitates the UV lights from the sun, and they're going to have the same effect on your body. So if you're in a house and you can't get out, or during the winter months to come, that's something that me and my household, we're going to use. I use it anyway, but we're going to use more of those during the winter when it gets darker and it's cloudy and stuff like that. So those are some of the things that you can do right now. And like I said, forgive people. If you're holding an offense towards somebody, you need to let it go. Because while you're holding on to that, it's hard for your immune system to take care of you. Eat better. Start eating soups and salads. So it's going to help during the winter time to keep your system running. Because if you still eat holiday food, which is, think about it, most of our holidays are when? In the winter, when it's cold. We eat we eat a lot of meat. We eat macaroni and cheese, and it's not just us, it's traditional food that we eat during the time when it's harder for your body to remove waste. You eat the stuff that's extremely hard for your body to break down when at a time when you should not be eating it. And to me, what it looks like it's by design. That's how it looks to me. But it's my personal opinion, not my professional one. So with that being said, if there's no more questions or comments, we are going to end this Zoom. All righty. All righty, gentlemen, ladies, I do appreciate your patience, and thank you, for listening. And going forward, I hope to hear back from some of you. Talk back to us. Let us know, what you learned, or if you do have something to share as well. We'll definitely gauge the information, and we would love to present it to the people, because I'm not all knowing. I know some of this stuff some of you have heard, but this is a platform for you to be able to, express and exercise some of that intellect that God has gifted you with, or that the Creator has gifted you with, because we all need it. Like I said, innate immunity, that's the unity of the body working as a whole conglomerate to fight a virus or a bacteria, versus vaccine induced, and that's just one thing. The collective always wins. It's always better as a collective. So that's what we hope to do, come together as a collective and work as a unit. So
Got a question, Charles,
yes.
from Dennis.
Okay. Dennis asks, what is the fast food doing as we eat it? Okay. I have a principle. It's principle 3. On the Healthformation website. So we go to healthformation.com and you click on the Cornerstone Health tab, go to principle number 3, and it talks about nutrition. So when you look at what we would call fast food, most of the fast food is synthetic. So a lot of it now, you think about, let's do some numbers here. You have all of these McDonald's. Let's say McDonald's serves 1 million pounds of meat every day. We don't have enough cattle on the planet to support that demand. So where is some of this meat coming from? Let's say it's horse meat. We don't have enough horses to support that demand. So where is this meat coming from? That's one thing to think about. But like you said, to answer your question, what is the fast food doing as we eat it? The fast food is slowing your body down. Because what your body is doing is you're introducing a foreign particle, foreign proteins into the body. So it's having the same effect on your body that a bacteria or a virus would have, because it's foreign. McDonald's doesn't grow in nature. So since you're a creation of nature, like science has told us, we all stem from the same place. The minerals that are in the ground, they're in your body. So let's say that is the case. And this meat that they serve at these different places, which there are lawsuits, some have been won against McDonald's for serving synthetic meat, and they're documented. You can look them up. This meat, it does not have a natural vibe or a natural correspondence with your body. There's no way for your body to really understand what it is. So what your body will do is this. you have the patty, you have the lettuce, the tomatoes, you have the onions, you have the bread, you have the mayo. That's 4 or 5 different things. So on the website as well, when you on that same tab, if you scroll all the way down, matter of fact, I want to show y'all. I'm gonna tell you first, and I'm gonna show you. It's improper food combination. So remember, I told you if you eat fast food, it's going to slow your body down. How? Well, when you look at how your body digests stuff, your body likes easy things. It likes to break food down that's easy for it to break down. So it's not going to break down that whole burger at one time. It's going to start with the lettuce and tomatoes first and the onions. That's a 2-hour breakdown if you have a good digestive system. Most of us don't in America. So it's going to break down that first. It's going to take 2 hours. Then it's going to move to the bread. That's going to take 4 hours. Then it's going to move to that meat, whatever that is, it's going to move to that. And that usually takes 4 to 8 hours. So now you have 8 plus 4 plus 2. So you got a good 14 hours of digestion going on from one burger. And I don't even want to talk about the fries and the milkshake or the fountain drink. So the fast food is slowing your body down. It's creating waste in the body. It's altering the pH in the stomach. Because if it's acidic, which most of that fast food is, then it's going to create an acidic environment in your body. You know, Dr. Sebi, he talked about it. You know, Dr. Layla Africa, I learned from him and his wife, Dr. Melanie Stevenson. They taught me about it, you know, and other practitioners as well. But when you look at the pH of the body, it alters the pH of the body. So in short, what it does is it slows down your body. And if it slows down your body, it slows down your immune system. If it slows down your immune system, it makes it to where it's easier for you to get sick. And you can argue with me and say, well, Brother Charles, I haven't got sick all summer. Praise the Lord. When winter time comes, then that's when we're going to see, because it's not going to be hot. Those fluid systems, they're going to slow down. And then we're really going to see what your immunity looks like whenever it gets cold, because winter is coming. So that's what the fast foods are doing to the body.
Them fast foods is slow foods, y'all.
Somebody says, seriously, there aren't many cows on the farms that we pass. It's really not. You know, and there's much to be said about the stance that Bill Gates is taking on making synthetic meat. He's already taken over the patents for Impossible Burgers and stuff like that. So my curiosity is, if these meat farms were being destroyed, meat is one of the main items I deliver. Gotcha. So as a deliverer, I have seen a lot of farms or meat farms in America have caught fire, and a lot of them have burned down. And there has been a decreased supply in the amount of meat that we have in America. Now, all of a sudden, I don't know why it's happening right now. I mean, I'm not going to say I don't know why, but I have an idea as to why it's happening now. But, you know, meat is definitely going to be one of those things that's going to be used as a transmitter. So what is the shipper shipping? I see cow farms. I see cow farms out here. I hope that this makes sense. See. Yep, same thing. I drive over the road and I was curious and looking to research the truths and facts about meat farms that were being burned down. See, a lot of them were being burned down. They burned down because the meat is so contaminated and it's spread across the entire farm, I believe, personally. Good assumption. So where are we? Where do we get foods then?
So where do we get food from? Where do we get food then?
Okay.
That's what he's asking.
So what I would say,
Mhm.
this is where the unity aspect comes in. So what I would start with, I don't know what state you're in, but I would look at the local farmers markets. So if you want to eat meat, you know, find a local farmer or cattleman who is selling meat, you know. If you want to get vegetables that are not contaminated, farmers markets. So instead of going to the grocery store, you know, like out here where I'm at, Saturdays is the farmers market. They have them, one in Broken Arrow, one on Cherry Street. They have one on in the Kendall Whittier district. They have them down Brookside. There's a couple of different places. They have meetings. If you type in Farmers Market of Atlanta, Farmers Market of Oklahoma, of California, then it'll pull up the local farmers markets that you can attend. And what I would do is I would research the farms and I would see, and you can call them too. Hey, do you guys, I have you could call them and tell them this. Hey, I have a sensitivity to pesticides. So I'm just asking to see, you know, do you spray pesticides on your crops? And they're going to tell you yes or no, because if you present them with a possibility of an allergic reaction, then they're going to be more hard pressed to tell you yes or no, because they don't want to get sued, because they're not covered under what we talked about with the emergency use authorization, the PrEP Act, and the protections that came from that. They're not exempt from suit if they conceal what they're putting on their crops that they're selling to you at those farmers markets. So I would start with the farmers markets. Then I would go to the whole food markets, and you'd be surprised. It's not as expensive as everybody think it is. Good food is not. So that's some of the things that I would do, is to where I go and get my food, and then change your perspective on food. You know, one of my friends, he asked me, and this was when I was still eating 5-6 times a day because I was working out and I thought I had to put that food in my body. He said, "Brother Charles, how long can you go without food?" I was like, "About 2-3 hours." He was like, "Seriously?" I was like, "Well, you know, they say Jesus did it for 40 days, so 40 days." And he was like, "Okay, 40 days." He was like, "So why do you eat every day?" And I was like, and 3 times a day at that. I was like, he was like, "You were taught that." So, you know, train yourself. Try to go without food for a day or two. You know, train yourself. You're not going to die, you know, unless you got like a medical condition or something like that. And of course, you want to consult with your doctor, so on and so forth about that stuff. But I mean, in all seriousness, you know, you gotta experiment, learn and experiment, you know. So yeah, hallelujah.
Yep. And then I'll say this, Dennis, far as your comment about where do we get food from then? Well, the ultimate goal is to be self-sustainable. The ultimate goal is to begin to know and understand how to grow our own food, because the government knows we have to eat no matter what. That is always going to be an inroad for attack, okay, no matter what, because they know we got to eat. So the ultimate goal is for us to begin to corroborate and get together and get land and have our own farms and food and stuff like that. That's not a ludicrous thing when you say that to most people. You know, we getting land, you know, having our own everything. They think that's so far-fetched and ludicrous. Well, it is not. That is what they did. That's what America is. A group of people got together with similar mindsets about things and agreed upon doing these things and put it into action. And now you got 52 states. Okay, so we're gonna. That's what we. It ain't something that we need to do. It is something that we absolutely have to do. It is a must. It is necessary, because they're trying to kill us and we're already at war. The line has already been drawn in the sand, and that's the facts.
Now,
Anybody
there
else
was
has
someone
something
in the
to say?
chat. There was somebody in the chat, and they said, you know, I believe it is to narrow down where the meat is coming from. I could be wrong. I see cows stacked on top of each other, exaggerated. So there's plenty of cows out there or out here. And yes, you know, if we did look more into that, and we like looked at the numbers and we checked everything out, the math doesn't equate correctly. But I do agree, because it does depend on where the meat is coming from. And that's why I stipulated, hey, find a farmer who has meat. Go and talk to him and see what he's feeding his cows. Does he feed them genetically modified corn or genetically modified soybeans? Is that something that he incorporates into their diet? You know, you got to go and talk to him and establish a relationship with him, because they're going to be the source from which you buy your meat, then the way you're going to learn about what type of meat or the quality of it is by having a relationship and asking those questions. So, it would be good. Yeah, there are real animal clones as well. So, and they have been doing that for a while. So, yeah. So yeah, we got some very informed and intelligent people who I would love to hear from on these matters when we bring them up. So that is good to hear. We're all we're looking into things because I know some of us have families and we want to make sure our little ones and our loved ones are safe. And that's what this is about. That's why I'm doing this. It's not just about me. I'm not up here trying to show you how intelligent I am. That doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you don't know me, but if I can give you something that's going to help you going forward, that's what the goal is. So take what it is that I'm offering and use it. So, hallelujah. So with that being said, yeah, Bill Gates is definitely purchasing the right to seeds, but there's way more heirloom seeds available. There's a lot of websites about that stuff. There's a lot of resources about it, heirloom seeds. So he doesn't have it like that yet, but that is definitely an attempt. Any good books on growing your own food? I would say, matter of fact, there's an app I have on my phone that you all can check out. It's called Seed to Spoon. So Seed to Spoon is a good app because what it does is it talks about different plants in the area that you're in. So, okay, let me take that back. This app is specifically for Oklahoma, and you can use it in other places, but the reason why I like it is because it's for this area here. Now, climates and soil conditions and pests and stuff like that are different wherever you go. But as a general overall, from seed to spoon, this is a really good app. And it goes into detail about like when to grow it, what conditions it grows in, the temperature it grows in, what pests to look out for, what bugs are good bugs, so you'll know which ones not to kill. I used it when I was gardening a while back, when I was growing tomatoes, 30 different types of peppers, hot peppers, bell peppers, romaine lettuce, kale, a bunch of different things that we grew. So I use this app as a tool whenever I was growing plants. So I think it would be an effective tool. It's called Seed to Spoon. And so let me pull up. So you'll see like, no, that's hard to see. You'll see like a spoon with a seed that's sprouting coming out of it. But it's a really good app. It's a really, really good app. It's one of the ones that I would recommend because it's so informative and it's free. And they don't throw a lot of stuff at you. Like you can literally get on there. I wish I could share my screen to show y'all, but like at the bottom, it has plants, my garden, critters, like it tells you about ants, asparagus beetles, birds, cabbage worms, corn borers, corn earworms, just all kind of stuff. Fruit worms, all of that stuff. So it's a really, really resourceful tool. Yep, I'm on it right now. Just downloaded it. Yep. So check it out and see. It's a really, really good app. It has a lot of information. It shows you the difference between the pest and the beneficial bugs, so on and so forth. So that would be a good app to use. Were there any other questions or comments before we close? You're welcome. My pleasure. All righty. Well, again, thank you all for your time. I do appreciate your patience with me. And I look forward to speaking with you all again. You all have a great evening. God bless.